This is going to sound weird coming from me, someone who is trying to make Latin film YouTube a thing. However, I feel like we're overanalyzing everything. I was watching the 1987 cinematic masterpiece that a friend of my friend's dad was in. Mannequin. Mannequin stars Brat Pack member Andrew McCarthy and my queen, Samantha Jones, aka Kim Cattrall. As of this recording, Mannequin is on HBO Max, and you should definitely watch this just wild as hell movie. This flick isn't Latin Hispanic at all. It's pretty white. Except for Hollywood, who is black and extremely offensively gay. And exaggerated, super flamboyant, Sex and the City gay. Anyway, that's not the point. The reason I'm talking about Mannequin today is that it falls into a genre of movie we don't get anymore, and it's hurting diversity. Stick with me. Mannequin tells the story of 20-something Jonathan Switcher and how he falls in love with Emmy. Emmy is an Egyptian woman who is cursed to only appear to artists and other nerds throughout history to inspire them and also see all the cool stuff she'd miss out on if she just married a camel dung farmer like her mother wanted her to. We know she is a real person cursed. Switcher knows she is a real person cursed. To everyone else, it's a weird and creepy relationship between a man and a mannequin. This movie is both the cringiest watch and genuinely really funny. It's also super sweet. Yeah, super sweet in a bizarre way. Emmy finally found a guy who treats her like a real person and wants her to experience how cool life can be. I'm telling you, it's wild. Like I said before, this movie belongs to a genre of movies we don't get anymore. Absurd, outlandish, don't overanalyze anything or else you will have an aneurysm kind of movie. We got a lot of them in the 80s and early 90s. White boys who want to say the N-word, for funsies, will tell you that you could not make a Mel Brooks movie today. Meanwhile, History of the World Part 2 is on Hulu, and Taika Waititi made Jojo Rabbit. What you really couldn't make today is a Naked Gun movie or Mannequin. Those are too absurd to be made. Why does that matter? No one is demanding another Zucker Brothers comedy. No one is petitioning to get an updated Beetlejuice or My Boyfriend's Back. So why am I talking about these zany movies? Because we need those flicks for diversity reasons. Recently, I've been doing short reviews on YouTube Shorts, and y'all have been requesting a lot of movies from the 90s. The 90s was an era where we got a surprising amount of good quality movies about Latin Hispanic folks. My theory is that we got all of these good movies because of all of the absurd movies we got in the 80s and early 90s. How do those equate? Writers want to sell a movie about Selena. Is a studio really gonna say no in the 90s? They can't. Movie studios greenlit Top Secret and all those Ernest movies. They have to make Selena and a bunch of other really good Latin Hispanic movies. Can they say no to My Family or El Norte when you greenlit Weekend at Bernie's 2?
Of course. No, don't be ridiculous.
Why don't we get Ace Ventura, Part 1, not Part 2, never Part 2, or Airplane? Because of this. Because of overanalyzing media. Well, Not exactly. I think it's twofold. A better scholar might come up with more reasons, but I've come up with two. First up, chasing trends and trying to be the next big thing. Have you noticed how a lot of stuff now has to be part of a cinematic universe? Thanks a lot, MCU. Kevin Smith having a connected universe is fun for hardcore fans. Universal trying to launch a dark universe is kind of sad. So we have, and I never thought I'd say this, too many comic book movies. We got origin stories for characters that don't need an origin story. Everything has to be a trilogy. Everything has to be based on an already existing intellectual property. And most of all, nostalgia. All things have to hit that nostalgia button, even if that makes movies make no sense at all. Why are you yelling? You don't even know who Khan is at this point. I feel like this chasing trends phenomena, that isn't new at all, actually, can be summed up in this scene from one of my favorite shows and current binge watches, Perfect Strangers. Seasons 1 through 5 are excellent. Mwah. No notes. They hold up better than most sitcoms. Seasons 6, 7, and 8 are very, very, very not good. However, in season 7, episode 10, Dimitri's World, the love of my life, Balki, is drawing a cartoon for the newspaper they work at. Cousin Larry is in charge of writing for the cartoon. Larry wants to chase current 1991 cartoon trends. Balki wants to keep the cartoon about a cute and cuddly sheep named Dimitri nice and wholesome. Larry says that Dimitri could be a four-legged Bart Simpson. Balki replies, they should draw 2 more legs on Bart and leave Dimitri alone. That is 1000% how I feel about most current media trends. Not everything needs a gritty reboot. Not everything needs an origin story. Not everything needs to be like whatever's trending right now. Things can be their own thing. The other reason why we don't get more ridiculous and absurd movies is because, like I said before, we are overanalyzing media to death. Wait, no. That's not right. I remember reading that the Russo brothers tried really hard to make Captain America: The Winter Soldier honest trailers proof. As if honest trailers is the reason why the Russo brothers are not good at making movies. You're gonna tell me The Gray Man sucked because of honest trailers? Sure, Jan. You, Me, and Dupree was pre-honest trailers. Stop blaming honest trailers for your lack of talent. Overanalyzing media has nothing to do with the media that gets made. Or at least it shouldn't. If you want to dedicate your time and energy to talking about a TV show, musical act, movie, etc., you should be able to. Entire Twitters, Reddit threads, YouTube channels, podcasts, personalities are based on shows and movies. I think for most everyone who makes any kind of art or media, all they want is for folks to congregate and enjoy that media. So, we the fans should continue to do that. The actual problem is that studios, writers, directors, producers, executives are listening to the discourse and making decisions based on internet chatter. Nosotros, mi familia, being here talking about movies, y'all making fun of my love of trash, dissecting how disappointed we were at this Tianguis avatar instead of the Canela Belleza we were waiting for. We should be free to talk about what we like and what we don't and not have some executives somewhere listening in. It's super weird and they really should not be haciendo caso to this kind of thing. Let me give you a few recent examples. Game of Thrones famously wanted to subvert audience expectations, so it made for some compelling television, but it also made for confusing conclusions to long-running storylines. If the internet didn't exist, the showrunners maybe wouldn't have thought they would have to keep subverting audience expectations and staying 2 steps ahead of Twitter threads. Another example is in Westworld. The showrunners there learned that a big twist on the show, some Reddit thread already had figured it out, so they felt they had to change it because of internet analysis and chatter. My sister and I keep making fun of Star Trek fans because they, like all other fandoms, keep changing their minds on what they want. Producers make a Trek that is similar to what has come before, and the fandom is like, ugh, can you do something different? Then they do something different, and the fandom is like, ugh, this isn't like the Trek I know and love. And it cycles that way forever. So we get a lot of not very interesting content because of internet chatter creators should not be listening to. I'm telling you, a lot of audiences don't even know what they want. And I'm saying make interesting things. That doesn't necessarily mean good. We become more obsessed with bad things. Do you know how many times I've seen the live action Aladdin? Remember, producers and executives, as audiences, we want interesting and compelling stories. As minority audiences, we don't want a bunch of talk. We want content. That's another problem with all this analysis and chatter. It creates nothing but blah, 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 and no action. Back in the day, executives would just do cocaine and greenlight everything. That's why the 80s and 90s had a lot of content that was bold and classic. You want a semi-prestige film about gangs and prison? Make Blood In, Blood Out. You want a film about cruising down Whittier Boulevard in East LA? Greenlight Boulevard Nights. Interesting and more diverse movies were made back then because everything got greenlit. If studios are greenlighting Better Off Dead, they have to greenlight Stand and Deliver. Nowadays, since all we do is talk about media to death, studios think that's all they have to do to appease us. They don't have to hire people of color and other minorities to make movies or TV shows. They can just say they are talking about how to make the media more diverse. They are talking about how to fix problems with representation. They are making committees to chat about why we don't see more variation in the stories being told. It's just talking. Not much action anymore. They think that since we do a lot of talking about the media, they can talk about it too and pretend they're gonna make it better. Maybe they should ignore most internet chatter and just go back to greenlighting everything. If they go back to greenlighting more absurd movies, it will make for more interesting diversity. I guarantee it. Lastly, I mentioned a lot of silly and absurd movies. To be clear, I'm not saying these movies are bad. Most of them are classic that I enjoy watching to this day. As mentioned in other videos, I love action movie trash and hate a lot of prestige Oscar bait films. Don't act like you, mi familia, are too good for silly and absurd content. I know you still quote Dumb and Dumber. I know you have yet to miss an episode of 90 Day Fiancé. You, like me, were trying to figure out who was framing Joe in this last season of You. Don't even pretend like all you like is the cinema and you don't love Face Off. As if you don't quote Point Break all day long. I know I do. Don't act like you're too good for The Room. What are your thoughts on my theory? Do you want more or less absurd, silly movies? I know we all want more diversity in stories and content. If there are any executives or producers out there watching, I have many ideas. You can trust me. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, salud, mi familia. I know there's going to be a comment or two here. This is just part of my comic book collection. I really am a comic book nerd. Every time I upload something about comic books and I get a bunch of comments from dudes being like, you don't even know what comic books are. Yes, I do. And get off the internet.